this into the universe. We really want to spend some time giving you some suggestions for how to get started and how to think of it broadly across higher education. I've worked in higher education for 20 plus years, mostly in the City University of New York system before coming over to NACE just about 6 months ago. And the first time I ever learned about career readiness and the NACE competencies were from Dr. Perez. So I want to spend a little moment just sharing who Dr. Jessica Perez is and why she's a critical voice in our conversation today. At Community College of the City University of New York. She's a certified Myers-Briggs type indicator practitioner with over 20 years of experience in career and professional development and employer partnership building. She oversees the SOAR Experiential Learning Program, Almezi Foundation Career Fellows Program, CUNY Career Launch, Spring Forward, and several other internship programs at her college. She previously served as the co-president of the Career Services Association of CUNY for 4 years, co-chair of the NACE Career Readiness Task Force from 2022 to 2023, and co-lead for the NACE 2-year and Community College Affinity Group from 2019 to 2021. She earned her doctorate in education from the University of Southern Mississippi's Higher Education Administration program, where her research is focused on first-generation students and how career services impact retention and graduation rates. She earned her master's in public administration from Metropolitan College of New York and her bachelor's degree in English and sociology from Binghamton University. In 2013, she completed the New York City Management Academy, a selective leadership training program for City of New York managers and executives. And I'm so delighted to have you here, Jessica. Do you want to just say hello quick, and then I'll pull up the slides and we're going to start our conversation today.
Sure. Thank you, Nisha. Thank you for having me. And I'm so excited to see a lot of familiar faces across the room. Take it away, Nisha.
Yes, I love seeing some familiar faces, and I'm getting all kinds of fun like little dings on my phone. Hello, hello. And it's so great to have you all here. Again, we're here to get to know this assessment tool and try to think about how we can start to implement this very well sort of created and thought out assessment tool to really complement and enhance the work we're doing, aligning the academic experience to career readiness. So what we're going to do today is, we had our introductions. We're going to talk a little bit about why we're here and really ground ourselves in the why of career competencies, and then why this particular assessment tool can be such a critical tool to you all. We want to get to know what the tool looks like, how we built it, kind of the nuts and bolts of how it works, and then get started with specific suggestions for how to think about using the tool, starting with higher education leadership, career services, and faculty as initial components of kind of really launching this tool. Just to ground us in who NACE is and kind of why we're pushing through this space and moving to this assessment tool. We represent 17,000 members across the nation, 2,800 institutions and organizations, 10,700 college career services professionals, and 3,600 early talent recruiters. We're one of the only organizations and associations that really works across the bridge of higher education to employers, which gives us a very unique perspective on why this work is so critical. The core thing that we're doing when we focus on career learning in the classroom, career learning in co-curriculars, and really making career learning explicit to students is trying to help to bridge the skills gap, right? Where a lot of employers do not think the students are ready for their career moves, and our employers are saying, our colleges are saying, oh, we did everything we could. And there's somehow a disconnect in really connecting students to those first experiences in the world of work. Uh-oh, what happened here? Okay, yeah. All right, so here is, just to get us all familiar again, and I assume a lot of folks are coming to the table with this understanding. These are NACE's career readiness competencies as they currently sit. They were, I think, launched in 2015, and they've been revised slightly. I think through the pandemic, there was an update to them. And we continue to really rely on folks in our network and in our membership to help us build solid information for what these core skills are and the sub-skills and behaviors that are connected to them. And that's what a lot of NACE's research is about, is keeping these fresh and relevant so that we're focusing on the right things when we're helping our students. The NACE strategy is really grounded in a focus on equity, right? We're not just thinking about how any student can, be a little bit more ready for the world of work, but we're really thinking about how can we prepare all students, and especially students who might face significant barriers for coming from low resource communities, for communities of color, to really give them a strong foundation where they can work their way into those initial conversations, where they're connecting to internships, connecting to first jobs, and coming through as strong candidates, right? So NACE really is committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the link here is to our statement on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're always looking to think about this work from a perspective of addressing unintended or intended, visible or invisible barriers to success. One of the things that's been clear in our research is that a lot of corporations, a lot of the businesses that are in our organization and that we're able to survey directly are telling us that they're less and less focused on GPA. It used to be something that was kind of the top of the list, and we wanted it to stay at the top, and that has really shifted. And that has opened up opportunities in a variety of ways. And that one of the things that we see that that industry is focused on in place of the GPA are these competencies, right? They're looking at some other things as well, like major, for example, although it doesn't, I think 50% of our employers do not only look at major, and they're open to many majors. But that's one of the other things they look at. And then competencies become one of those top things that employers are considering. I know, Jessica, I'd love to get your perspective here a little bit on, what this might look and feel like from the perspective of some of the students that you work with.
Yeah, definitely. And also, if I could start with the work that we did last year with the NACE Career Readiness Integration Task Force, we published a case study, and we interviewed institutions and employers, but I'll focus on the group that I was working on with the employers. And the organization shared with us that a major driver in really focusing more on competencies was because GPA was really arbitrary to measure a student, and they were missing on other talent from low income populations. So it was really interesting to get their perspective. And even my work at LaGuardia, employers are really interested in working more with community colleges specifically. Historically, right, they were focusing more on folks graduating with a bachelor's, but now employers are more invested in early talent, creating these early talent pipelines. So the article is available on NACE, just a quick pitch. Really great to read the perspectives of those employers we interviewed, but even in the day-to-day work, employers are working with us to really bridge those gaps. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the slides, but really bridging the gap with connecting these competencies to academics.
Great. Yeah, I think we could, when we're sending out the information after this, we could make sure that there's a link to that article as well, so folks can take a longer look. Yeah, so really what we hear from students, doing our student survey, is that about 57% of students feel very or extremely well prepared for the next step in their career. And we want to really lift this rate up, right? It's, one of the core purposes that students attend college for, it really is to get that next step set up for them and to feel like they have a strong plan for walking into those next steps. So we want to make sure to really augment this. So I think all of that is just, sort of the grounding in the why. And many of you that are in the room already get a lot of that. You're already kind of doing a lot of this work. So now we want to think a little bit about what does it mean to bring us to this next step where we're considering how an assessment tool shifts our thinking and might help us really augment the work we've done to connect career competencies into the academic experience. Right? Using this tool, you have a way to really assess students and job candidates and interns and really know how they're doing in specific competencies, right? And I think many folks have attempted this in a variety of ways. And I think part of what the NACE research team has done is really made sure to create a very carefully constructed tool based on confirmed behaviors that have come out of our research, and then to test the tool and refine the tool to a point where it is reliable and it is valid, right? And so these very specific terms, right? We know that it's reliable across raters and that you can really trust the result, that students who are scoring in a particular level have that level of proficiency, and you can start to make then decisions, right? So you get this actionable feedback to be able to adjust your programming to help students focus their activities and really start to tailor the kind of career readiness that you're building on your campus. Right? These are kind of the ways that you can use this new tool, right, is to leverage a field-tested tool. Again, it's validated and reliable, and there's going to be some more information coming out, a technical paper that really shows how we did that research. You can engage in common language, right? So this is really critical. You know that later on today, we have another workshop that's focused on employers. And really what we're trying to do is bridge the conversation and the language across to our employers. And it can also be used within your institution to create common language. So students are hearing similar things from the moment they step on campus all the way through their academic experience. This can activate a data-driven approach to closing the skills gap so that you can have a real sense, validated data from how your students are performing, and try to help build your plans for improving their capabilities as they move towards their graduation. And to consider how to really contribute to the establishment of the first ever national benchmarks of career readiness. We'll talk a little bit about this, as we move on, and there are actually 2 further webinars happening in December that are with our 2 exclusive partners. One is Career Launch and one is Suitable. The first round of establishing benchmarks will happen through those partners, though everybody has access to a free version of our assessment tool, which I hope many of you have already accessed. But you'll learn a little bit more about how the implementation occurs through our exclusive partners in those follow-up webinars. So I encourage you to go to those. They're on December 11th and 13th. And those folks who participate with those partners will be part of our first ever establishment of benchmarks. And then as we move forward, there will probably be ways for all of us to contribute to that benchmarking. All right, I want to share a little bit about the tool itself, just things that you might want to know as you're talking about this tool and how it works. This is what it looks like. This is one piece of it. We sometimes refer to it as multiple rubrics, right? That you're going to have one of these for each of the competencies. This is critical thinking. And you'll see it has different dimensions, right? And those are based on the skills that were validated per competency, right? So you'll see display situational awareness, gather and analyze data, make effective and fair decisions. To me, one of the things that's nice about looking at a competency in this way is that I think it's a very helpful learning tool for students to get underneath what a term like critical thinking means, right? So I think sometimes we have a sense of what critical thinking is, but we want to be able to get into the specifics of what is important in the workplace around critical thinking to help students see what it might look like. And then you'll see that we start with emerging knowledge and move, from that level 1 to level 4 in terms of proficiency in that particular area. This is also the student version, and there are 2 different versions, a student version and an observer version, right? So a way for students to self-assess, and then a way for them to be assessed by someone. Maybe it's a supervisor in an internship course. Maybe it's a faculty member. Maybe you're sitting one-on-one with a student in career services, and you're able to give your feedback on what you're observing and you see in the student's capabilities, and the student can do it themselves, and you can use that as a point of conversation, right? So there's 2 different versions. We see a little bit more about kind of how we built this, right? It's really created based on the idea of Bloom's taxonomy. So you're coming from a place of early connection to the material or the ideas, and then building the capability of understanding, later application, right? And getting into being able to really have a lot of facility in using that that capability or whatever the competency, right? You're able to kind of really put it into play and keep it in action. So we just based some of the development from like level 1 to level 4 in Bloom's taxonomy. And that we were always thinking of kind of the terminology as heading towards a mastery learning approach, meaning that we don't expect anybody to start in deficit, right? We're always starting from where we are. Wherever you are is great, and building from there towards a mastery level. And that's what you see in the sort of the lexicon. That's what you see in how we're talking about it with students, right? That level 1 is just emerging knowledge. You're starting to understand and have some awareness. Level 2, the understanding is getting a little bit deeper. You see the student really take it in and try to, maybe there's some initial awareness that is brought to the table beyond that just being able to recognize. Early application, right? Somebody's going to start to put this into practice, and then advanced application. It's consistent. They're always doing it. They're pushing for that next level. Again, I mentioned before, you always want to think about the rating, right? And again, if you're going to be starting this on your campus, you want to think carefully about this component, right? So if you were going to get it started in the classroom, you might want to have students do a pre-test. Say they're going to be really focused on critical thinking and teamwork. You might want to do a pre-test in those 2 competencies, and then a post-test. And that can be a self-assessment and a faculty assessment. And then you can look for those differences and have conversations with students about that growth. But those are always choices you're making, is considering the student versus the observer. All right. So we just hit the tool itself. We got over just kind of getting a little familiarity. I really encourage you to do some sessions on your own campuses with, print out these assessments, do your own self-assessment, then talk about it. Create a couple of scenarios and get started using the tool, and you'll start to get a real feel for it. I think that's the best way, is to use the tool. But now I want to talk a little bit about some suggestions for getting started. And it was really important to me to start with leadership. In my sort of dream of how this goes, it is really living at the level of leadership first, and it's a whole campus engagement. I think that is ideal. I also just think it's the right thing to do for your students, is to think carefully about career learning as braided or integrated with the whole experience from the very beginning, right? So, these are just my sort of like calls to action here. There are many demands and expectations in higher education of aligning with career thinking, with industry need, and helping your students become career ready. Using this tool across the campus and really thinking about integrating career competencies throughout the student's experience over time is really a very good way to make sure that you're paying attention, right? You're going to hold your own self accountable as a campus and making sure you have this integration across many spaces so that a student is never just thinking about career one time or even 0 times, right? Like, which definitely happens, right? But you're going to kind of make a commitment as a campus to help students gain these skills over time. You can think about critical points, and we'll talk a little bit about some suggested points of engagement, but how about a pre-test, a midpoint test, and a post-test for the entire campus, right? Like when you can really look at how students are developing these competencies, and then consider what programming helps students really start to grow in alignment with that competency development. So one suggestion comes from work that I did at Gutman Community College, which is to find ways to align the career competencies. And actually, Jessica was the first person who showed me how to do this. At LaGuardia, she just made a nice little chart, just like this one, of the competencies that were of focus for the institution and how they align with the NACE competencies to help to see how those things connect. There are some different interests for the, let's say, general education learning outcomes or institutional learning outcomes, so that you like to be able to see a side by side. But you can see that there are lots of alignments with anybody who is asking for accreditation. There's usually general education or institutional learning outcomes required, and they are often these broad set of outcomes. So they have overlap at least, right? So at Gutman, we aligned our communication, technology, critical thinking, leadership, equity, and inclusion. And then we had additional ways in the college assessment plan to assess teamwork and career readiness that were a little bit outside of this core set of outcomes, but we made sure across the programs that those were assessed. So aligning your accreditation and your college-wide institutional outcomes to the NACE competencies can be a critical way to really see where these things are happening and where you need to focus on some greater support or growth, including the assessment tool as a component of really looking at those things and really being able to assess those things. Right? So ideally, like I said, you don't want a student to walk into a campus and get through to their, let's say they're in a community college, into their like second to last semester, and they start to go, oh my gosh, pretty soon I'm going to be done. Like, what am I supposed to do now? And then maybe make it over to the Career Center if they have time, which is hard for someone who's probably working and taking care of family and doing a lot of things, or someone who is in that 4-year degree path and heading towards their last semester, then finding a way to ask these questions like, where should I graduate? What should I do? Be thinking kind of in a more careful and scaffolded way about their career learning. So this is just a suggestion of places that might be critical spots to help students consider career learning, how to understand that competencies are developed over time, and how to start to pay attention to them and work in collaboration with the whole campus to build the right tools and become successful in their plans for the future and for their career. So orientation is one place, right? Set the tone that this is one of the things you're doing is helping them prepare for career. Start to sort of get into their mind that as they go through their experience, they should start to select and add things to their resume. They should be practicing how to talk about that learning in a way that's relevant for the world of work, and those competencies can ground that conversation. First-year seminars, which at LaGuardia are required, and that is the recommendation, is that if you're going to introduce the career competencies in a first-year seminar or somewhere in the first year, hopefully the first semester, it's in a required course so that no one gets left out of that conversation. And then consider general education courses, or maybe the very first part of a major, right? The first course that you're introduced to business, or you're introduced to sociology, that you're learning about how to connect the things you're going to learn in that degree and that program that are relevant for the world of work, and how they connect to the world of work. So that there's at least 4 or 5 or 8 points across their experience where they're starting to practice and put onto a resume, and hopefully practice talking about these career competencies being developed. If along the way they're getting this kind of experience, they're not going to be shocked if you ask them to complete this assessment and talk a little bit about what they're learning and how it's relevant to the world of work. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Jessica to tell us a little bit about some ways that she is thinking about this assessment tool, and really the connection to career services and the kind of support that they offer.
Thank you, Nisha. I just wanted to focus on the pre-post that resonated a lot with me. With our SOAR experiential learning program at LaGuardia, pretty much it oversees all of the experiential learning activities in collaboration with the academic departments. But the best part of the program is our internship program, in which students work 120 hours a semester for a $2,000 stipend, just to give you a little bit of context. And with this program, what we did was we have students complete a pre-internship assessment based on the competencies, really to get a grasp of where the student is, because we're really big with meeting the students where they are. And then the student also completes a mid-internship survey, and kind of like a check-in, like, how are you doing? How's the internship going? What are you learning? How does this correlate to your major? And the advisors in the program, they meet with the students at least once a month. So there's a required touch point with the advisor, really to keep that connection, right, back to, okay, what are you learning and what are you developing? And then at the end, there's a post-internship survey as well that we collect from the students. Also, the supervisor evaluates the students, and that's where our employer engagement piece comes in. We really involve the employer in providing that feedback to us, because again, right, we as humans, right, we could assess ourselves. I'm a great communicator. You may not agree, right? That may not be your best skill set, but you're very confident that it is. So it's really giving the student very real-time feedback from both the employer, the advisor, and also hearing what the student thinks, right, from their perspective of what they earn. So to these, back to the competencies, also we work with faculty. We work, for example, with the health sciences department. To Nisha's point, first year seminar. We go to almost every first year seminar, and we have the students complete the career coach assessment that we offer at LaGuardia. And it's a very engaging conversation. And these are the students that continue to persist. They're the students that eventually graduate from the institution because of those early touch points with career services. And these are the students, right, that are going to our job fair tomorrow. They're applying for future SOAR internships because they were able to explore their careers, have an understanding of where they are, and then have an understanding of what skills do I need to be successful, right? We call it like the tools of their toolbox, right? What are the tools that you need to be successful? Another great example of things that we're doing at LaGuardia with faculty is with our nutrition program. Over the summer, typically happens over the summer, and during our session twos, our schedule's a bit different. But these students are required to do a resume review, which is reviewed by the team using rubrics. We also have students review their LinkedIn profiles for that networking element. And the last piece of the activities is the students are required to participate in a mock interview. They're provided with a mock job description based on, right, on the NACE competencies and what's trending in the world of nutrition. And then the students participate in these mock interviews in groups, and it's facilitated by the career advisors. And then the career advisors provide them with real-time feedback right after the session. They record the session, and then they are provided a rubric, again, surrounded around the NACE competencies of how well did you do, and really giving them constructive feedback. And based on that, the student reads it, they welcome the feedback. And some, I admit, I wasn't prepared. I didn't even read the job description. These things happen. And then there's those that are like, wow, I really want to come back to the office. Could I meet with you? I have an interview coming up and I really want to enhance my skills. So again, it's like a win-win, right? Academically, right, they're tying it back to what they're learning in the classroom, and then professionally is really getting that feedback and landing jobs right after. There's co-curricular, I could go on and on, right? There's also co-curricular programming that we work with related to the competencies. And I'm forgetting one main thing. We have digital badges. So we based the chart that Nisha was referring to that I introduced her many moons ago. It's based on the NACE competencies. And then what we did was we created career readiness badges. So all the students that I mentioned from the symposium, there's an undergraduate symposium that we participate, that students do research. They are awarded badges, and the nutrition students, based on the competencies that we work with the faculty very closely, selecting which ones the students will be working towards and providing that evidence that's then attached. So the evidence could be the research project. It could be the recording of the mock interview the student is comfortable, a write-up from the student, or even a statement from the program directors of the programs saying the student participate in XYZ activity, and we as an institution certify that the student has earned this competency, right? They demonstrated that they're doing really well in that. So we work with different academic programs, with co-curricular programs with that. And the most important piece is our employer engagement. Really, we involve the employers in developing the internship job descriptions, posting them in our Simplicity platform, and it all ties back to the competency so that students understand, right, from the time they're applying, when they're doing the internship and post, what was the goal and what are the competencies that we want you to earn. And again, our SOAR interns also earn career readiness digital badges at the end of their internship, which is an incentive, right? They very happy they put it on their LinkedIn profiles. They want to add it on their resume. And many of our students are on average, since we launched SOAR in 2021, I believe. I'm sorry, that's all fuzzy, right? All these years. But the students are now completing between 2 and 3 internships before graduating. That is amazing. We had 0 internships, as Nisha could attest. Years ago at our institution, it was like not something that was really pushed. It was just academic for credit internships. But now these more co-curricular entry level internships are being pushed, and students are eager and hungry to gain experience in their major. Again, to just support and say, hey, I really want to be a nurse, so I really want to be an accountant. And these experiences are only enhancing, right? And their drive to want to persist and graduate from LaGuardia. So very successful. And some other examples are things that we're doing in the future with employers, and we'll be in the NACE. I know Nisha mentioned it. We'll be in the NACE symposium with some of our partner employers discussing this. Is we are doing like industry chats. We're bringing our employers on campus to speak to faculty. Where are the gaps? Where are students lacking when it comes to competencies? How could we embed this in our curriculum? How could we create programming? How could we create or update our curriculum? And we're having great engaging conversations with faculty, and we're hosting sessions at least twice a semester, bringing in our current partner employers to meet with our faculty. So really exciting work that has happened and is now being pushed forward for this academic year. And really the goal is really to evaluate our effectiveness as career services. And so far, research is showing, right, if students have at least one touch point with career services, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, they are more likely to persist, graduate, and complete at least 2 internships and graduate. So Nisha, I believe I gotta go to the next slide, right?
Yeah, let me just say to you, Jessica, thank you for those examples. I mean, I think part of what you hear is that these are very well thought out programs or initiatives with all of these different components. I think part of what, like, Jessica has essentially like created her own process for pre and post assessment. This assessment tool can really offer that to you, right? Like, it's something you could use to help students kind of gain that initial understanding and that post understanding and get the employer connection. And I think the stuff you're doing with the industry chats is so critical. You've mentioned a couple of times things you've learned directly from your employers about how you need to shift the curriculum and better prepare students. And that really, that tool allows you to have that conversation and really push that forward.
So here are additional examples. We as the career services, right, leaders on our campuses. And when I say leaders, it's not just about being a director, right? I feel my advisors have such a large voice. They're in the weeds, like I say. I make them laugh. I say they're in the weeds. They're the ones speaking to students. So it's really important to offer these one-on-one assessments, really to help students understand and align, right, what they're learning in the classroom to their career goals. And really, even during the interview process, like, how do you translate, right, what you've learned in the classroom? And even at their internship, sometimes some of our students struggle. They say, oh, it was a great internship. I learned a lot. Okay, what did you learn? So again, these competencies and rubrics will help with that. Also helping students with their resumes, as I mentioned earlier in the mock interviews, that feedback is so critical. And students are have been very receptive to it. As always, there's some students that don't take it as serious, right? It is what it is, as the nature of our work. But those students that take it serious, you could see the improvement, and you could see them how they are hungrier for more experiences. And actually, some of them have gotten hired at our employer partners. There's Ferrara Manufacturing. They actually created and sold the outfits for Ralph Lauren for the Olympics, and our student was there as a store intern. Saw the whole process. I had seen the jackets from a year ago and I couldn't say anything, but it was amazing to see them on television. And then our student actually got hired this fall semester as an employee to finish off some projects. So, the work itself, right, is a test of the students' drive, but also the work of career services. And then also the assessment tool could be very critical to working with your federal work study offices or any work-based learning offices on your campuses. As at LaGuardia, it's housed at Career Services, but there's also an academic global experiential learning office. I do want to make a note of that. But we work very closely together. We support their internships. So, for example, the LaGuardia Humanitarian Initiative, we help them place students at different nonprofit organizations here in New York City, and they go through the same process. They're getting that pre, mid, and post assessment. They're earning digital badges. So it's a very collaborative environment at LaGuardia with our faculty members. And federal work study critical, right? We don't want them just answering phones. We want them to have an entry-level experience in that particular department. And very similar, we just launched, it's called the Friedman Scholars Fellowship, and they're going to be working on campus, earning digital badges and doing these working towards these competencies. So really exciting. So it's really my biggest advice to everyone is work with your faculty, work with your leadership. At LaGuardia, career is at the forefront throughout CUNY as well. I know there's some CUNY colleagues here on this call, and they could attest to that. Our chancellor is very focused on students completing at least one internship, working towards these competencies. So that's very critical. So, get in the ear of your leadership if you're not, but I'm sure you all are, and really show them how students are persisting at your campuses when they have at least that one touch point with you early on, right? As Nisha mentioned, some students wait to the end, but meet them at new student orientation, introduce them to the competencies, introduce them to your career assessments, and they are more than likely going to look for you. They're going to look for your office and meet with all of you. So that's my take on great work when it comes to the competencies.
Yeah, you can really hear in Jessica's examples that she does not see lines between the work that she's doing that's sort of directly career services or maybe traditionally career services and
It's
the
for
work she does
Alec.
across the
So
team.
like these are like mine because
So even though she already mentioned the work that she does with faculty, it's very much a part of how she thinks that, you know, career learning happens everywhere. And, you know, like I said, I learned this from her to not stop when you see those lines, right? Like that traditionally there's not a lot of crossover, but there's more and more happening. And certainly on LaGuardia's campus, I've seen that. Maybe one thing to mention too is that the City University of New York system is doing a program called Career Success Fellows, I think, and about 50 faculty across the system each, I don't know if it's each semester, each year, are learning how to integrate career learning and career competencies into their curriculum. And so that starts to spread, right? That there's just more awareness happening and more collaboration happening that exists between career services, thinking about career and preparing for career, work-based learning, and the curriculum itself. So I wanted to mention here that NACE is also doing a lot of faculty training. This is something that sits right in my area. And I have had the pleasure in the last 6 months to work with 3 different colleges, really kind of taking what we're calling NACE faculty fellows to the next sort of level. We're trying to train up lots of folks to do this work so that it really can spread nationally. And what we do is to help faculty basically think through what does it look like to bring career thinking into my classroom, and how can I align my current curriculum to the competencies. Almost every course I've ever seen has career competencies in it. And what we're trying to do is really help faculty kind of see this connection and then make some connections for the students so that the student starts to really take it in themselves, that the things that they're learning in the classroom are also relevant for the world of work, right? So it's a new sort of, it's just a shift of the lens a little bit for a faculty member to think about things in this way, to make those connections, and then to really ask students to start to articulate and practice talking about their learning in a way that's relevant for the world of work. So I always, one of the things that I really push when I'm working with faculty and we're getting into some details with them about maybe a certain assignment is really focused on teamwork, and we want the student to be able to talk about what they learned in that assignment around teamwork in some place where they might be trying to get a job, right? And so we might help them construct a bullet point on their resume related to teamwork and what they've done in the course, and then maybe give them a little quick activity to have them practice articulating what that felt like for them to participate with a team, to engage with their colleagues, to talk about aligning different strengths and talents across a team and things like that. So really helping them be one of the stop points for a student along their academic experience, where they're going to add another piece to their resume and they're going to start to be able to articulate what they learned in the classroom. I think there's, you know, the hope is that you would get from that beginning point of one faculty trying this to consider looking at a whole program, right? That have the students look at their development of competencies that are relevant to that particular program over the period that they're really focused in on that major and that discipline. And that can help them really shape the right kind of resume for the field that they're entering. So those are some of the things when we're thinking about faculty, and really thinking about the importance of bringing career learning into the curriculum. I know I don't have to say, you know, this to Jessica twice, but especially in community colleges, but this is true even in four-year colleges, many students don't have the luxury of time outside of the classroom. And if we continue to have the only sort of real strong career learning experiences in a career center that is co-curricular, we're going to miss students. We're going to be missing out on a whole group of students that really don't have the space and time in their lives to do something outside of the class. So we want to be able to pull this experience right into the curriculum with some of those augmented experiences, the deepening of the work, et cetera, happening then in support and beyond the curriculum. All right, we wanted to make sure, like I'm just going to move this thing over here, that everybody just was aware that coming up very soon is the NACE Competency Symposium. This NACE, not every NACE Competency Symposium has had this focus because we just launched this assessment tool. But for this Competency Symposium, we're going to be kicking off with a conversation around how to use the assessment tool with another group that's going to kind of sit across faculty and staff, thinking about different ways of getting started with the tool. But we're also going to have somebody from the NACE research team kicking off that experience. And then we're going to have a lot of examples that might be very relevant. Jessica, do you want to share just your couple of sessions, what they're going to be like on the symposium?
Sure. I'm super excited about the employer panel. We're gonna have three organizations, but 4 partner employers to talk about their experiences with our students that are in our SOAR experiential learning. These have been longtime partners, so they've seen every cohort, really to discuss the development of the student when they come in, their skills based when they come in and when they exit, right, and complete their internship. And then the other session is really focusing on the questions that I'm seeing in the chat. And sorry, I'm trying to go through it as quickly as I can, really to discuss how we developed the competencies and then how we have embedded it into different programming in our office and aligning them to the LaGuardia competencies as well. So we'll be hosting 2 different sessions at the symposium. So please join us.
Yeah, and another session that I'm really excited about, what we're also going to have lunch and learns by our 2 exclusive partners on the assessment tool, Career Launch and Suitable, at the lunch period. So if you register, you'll be able to see both because everything's recorded, but you'll get to see what the implementation is with those 2 partners, which can make it much easier to scale this kind of assessment across the campus. And also, again, as I mentioned earlier, you'll be a part of our national benchmarking work in that first year that we're launching. And then at the closing session is going to be a conversation with Matthew Brink, who is my boss and was the leader of all this career readiness work back in 2015. And a vice president at AACNU, the American Association of Colleges and Universities. So bringing in really a crosswalk from the AACNU value rubrics and learning outcomes, right? So looking at sort of core liberal arts learning outcomes as they align with the NACE competencies, and really together talking about the importance of looking at both of those lenses together. So again, that's just our pitch to, come take a deeper look with us if you want to at that competency symposium on the 14th. And now we have a few minutes for questions. I'm going to stop sharing so we can kind of see faces, but we're happy to take a couple of questions. And maybe Liz, you can help us sort through what we got in the chat. I have certainly not dug in far enough.
If you want to go into the Q&A, Nisha, that'd be a little bit easier. I ask people to drop them in there for you.
There we go. First destination data survey. Oh, that is a good question. The first question is, will this assessment be part of the first destination data survey? I'm unclear on where this assessment is used. Okay, well, right now I will say it's not currently, it's really just getting started. We launched it in August. And so folks are just digging in now for the first time using it. Right now, it's not a part of the first destination survey. That is something that's a self-assessment of students really to look at where they've landed. But that is a really interesting idea to consider placing it into that survey and thinking about what we see in terms of competency development at that first destination moment. So I hope that answered that question, but it just really just gave me a lot to think about, and I'll take back to the NACE team. Does assessment also define the competency like social awareness? So they have a definition as they do the rating. There is a definition as a component of each competency. There's a definition that opens, that sort of grounds the conversation up front. And then you go into the specific responses as you come down. So on some level, yes. I will say that in the kind of the testing that occurred, and I should have mentioned up front, it's been tested with something like 600 different volunteer raters, including a set of students, like 100 campuses, I think, total. So we had a really broad set, and it happened over about 2 years altogether. A little less than that, but almost. And the times that I've used it with students, it does help them understand. So it not only the definition, but actually going through the rating is helps students develop a little stronger sense of what is meant by the competency. I don't know. Do you have a sense of that? I know you haven't used this specifically, Jessica, but like what happens when a student's rating themselves around understanding the competency?
Yeah, we haven't implemented these yet, but definitely the existing ones, the student feels, I feel like they feel ownership, right, of where they are, whether it's at the beginning or the middle or towards the end. So I think that ownership for the student, right, like they're the owners of their career journey, I think is really important, and of their own, right, skill development. And they could only be honest with themselves, right? And I think that's really important to give students that opportunity to own it is really what comes to mind.
No, that's helpful. And I do think, yeah, I mean, it's the same thing that when I talk to faculty about shifting in the class to not only just showing where competencies are aligned, but asking students to represent their learning in a way that's like an interview. So you say something like, can you tell us a little bit about, how well you work in teams? And then to have the student, like they're on that hot seat, articulate it in that way. In the same way, it's hard for every single one of us when we've interviewed. It takes a while to get to, again, like feel like you have agency over that story about how you, what kind of skills you bring to the table, what kind of competencies you bring to the table. I see a question here about just confirming that there is a no-cost version. There is a free PDF version on the website. And Liz, maybe you can remind me that we can just make sure that it's easy to get to. Either we can put it in the chat here, or we can, when we send out the materials, make sure that you know where to access it. It's a free PDF version for members.
Yes, I'll put it in the chat in just a second.
Thank you. All right, I'm reading the next question. I mentioned 4 to 8 touch points for the competencies. Always is better. What's the sweet spot for moving the needle? The truth is that this assessment tool is the first time we have a really grounded and reliable tool to assess. So part of what we're going to be learning, and this is, that's like a great research question, is let's say we put a core, like right now at LaGuardia, I think like technically probably first year is one place. Any student who has an internship is going to have this experience with you, which is really grounded in the competencies. There might be capstone courses, right? So you could almost test in a particular program, maybe 4 touch points, and look using this tool to see if they gain the competencies to the point that you expect. Let's say you want them to be in a 3 to 4 in these competencies. I think we're just starting to be able to actually study this based on a tool like this. I know when we've done this kind of assessment at Gutman Community College, we could have assessed it using the way that they were assessing there. There's a different assessment, but rubrics that were used. we could have, that's essentially what their general education assessment looked like, is to look at things like communication, critical thinking, and to look over time at different snapshot points, like early first semester, midpoint, and later, to see if you saw the growth that you expected, and if not, to try to adjust from there. So I don't have the answer about the sweet spot, but I think we're going to start to understand this a little bit better using this assessment tool. Someone I think asks you this question, Jessica: how many students have you had in the program? Maybe that's the SOAR program. And how many employers?
With employers, I think we have 100 strong partners that they could be active either a fall or spring semester. Students for the SOAR program, we've served over, I think we're at 400 that have gone through the program. And currently we have the students just started working right after Columbus Day. So we have 125 students for this year to one pipeline, and about another 40 through other internship programs that are funneled through the SOAR program. So on average for this year, I think it's a little bit more. We're gonna have close to 200 students that have completed a paid internship, a stipend-based internship, because there's a lot of other internships that are external.
Mm-hmm. There's a couple of questions about badging and the criteria for badging. I remember going through some of that process. I will say, and you can, well, we're almost out of time, that you could use this tool to establish where a badge is attained. Like if you hit the rate of 3 or 4, or once you hit 4, that's the badging point, or something like that. Yeah, but I think those, do you all review things for the badges in terms of, like, what's the vetting process?
Yes, yeah, so very quickly, the hours are stackable. So students, if they earn, let's say, three smaller badges: communication, professional ethics, and technology, they will earn the career readiness badge, which is the meta badge. We do review all the materials. Again, we work with the program lead, right? So if it's a faculty member, whatever the co-curricular program lead is, and we have a rubric with sample evidence that students could work on. So it's like a whole package deal. Like if they want to give the leadership badge, these are suggested activities, but we base it on what the faculty member is interested in. And then we have the students submit through a form their evidence, which is reviewed by us. Then from there, we attach it to the badge. We use Credly as our platform, and I shared the link on the chat. It shows all the badges that exist currently at LaGuardia. It's not only just the career readiness badges. And from there, we attach the badge, and then usually the program director or the faculty member we're working with provides like a testimonial. That's the language of Credly. That is like, a quick blurb of what the initiative was. That's attached also. And then we are responsible for, meaning career services, awarding the badge to the student, and the student claims the badge on their end. And then from there, they could share it on any platform online. So it's really exciting. A lot of the students do claim them, and they display them, as I shared earlier, on their LinkedIn profiles. Like, hey, I did this on this past academic year.
Right. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for spending this time and really sharing these very specific examples, which kind of brings the whole story to life. Thanks everyone for spending this time with us. We think there's going to be a lot more sort of experience like this. There's going to be a pre-conference workshop for our 2025, where we get deep into your sort of assessment interests and journey, and we can help you. And please feel free to reach out with further questions. And keep your eye out for, we've got 2 more workshops. Well, one this afternoon with employers, if you want to pop by, 2 to 3. And then there's going to be 2 more sessions with Career Launch and Suitable, our exclusive partners, sharing their implementation of this tool in December. So keep your eye out for those sessions as well. And thanks so much for a great chat, Jessica.
Thanks, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Again, we will have the recording, the slide deck, and we will work on answering questions that were not answered and get those out in an email at a later date. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.